Hello, welcome to your video on factoring x squared plus bx plus c. By the end, you will be able to factor trinomials that are in this form. So let's get started. Your essential question is really, how do I factor x squared plus bx plus c? Basically, your b just is a constant and a c is your other constant. That's just how we write it in the basics. So here's how you want to consider what happens and how this works. So when I expand this out, so whether I'm foiling, box method, distributing, whatever, I end up with x squared plus 10x plus 21. And if you look at your 10x and your 21 and your 3 and your 7, you can start to see the relationships between them. 7 plus 3 will give you 10, and 7 times 3 will give you 21. And that's the key. Your b term is created by adding your two constants in your original binomial, and then your c term is found by multiplying your two constants from your binomial together. So let's run through some examples now that you understand how this works. The first one here I have is x squared plus 8x plus 15. So you want to think about your factors of 15 and your sums. So my factors and sums, I'll just make a table here quick. Factors are 1 and 15, 3 and 5. I multiply those together and I will get an answer of 15. Sum of the factors 1 and 15 is 16, and then 3 and 5 is 8. That's what I'm looking for because b is 8. And so I know my final answer is going to be x plus 3, x plus 5. Now you can flip-flop your binomials around and say x plus 5 and then x plus 3. It doesn't really matter. Here's another example. This one's just slightly different because if you notice, the b term is actually negative instead of positive this time. And what happens here, you're still going to make your table of factors and sums of 24. So I'll just make a quick table. And you want to generate this idea. So I know negative 1 and negative 24 make 24. You want to think about your positives and negatives. That will give me a sum of negative 25. Negative 2 and negative 12 will give me a sum of negative 14. And let's see, 3 and negative 8. That gives me negative 11. That's what I'm looking for here. So then my binomials will be x minus 3 because that was negative, and then x minus 8 because that was negative as well. You notice by looking at my table here of factors and sums, I didn't include any positives, although I could have, just knowing that it would change my sums a little bit. So partially is just using your math knowledge, number sense skills to determine which types of numbers will work. Just trial and error, really. Again, we have this one. This one's slightly different because now our c term is negative. You're going to follow the same process. It'll just be just a tad bit different. So factors and sums. And let's see, 1 and negative 15 would give me negative 15 when multiplied. Sum would be negative 14. Negative 1 and 15, so the other way around, would give me a sum of 14. Try some more. 3 and negative 5, that would give me a sum of negative 2, but if it was negative 3 and 5, that would give me 2, and that's what we're looking for. So x minus 3, x plus 5. And again, this binomial could be written by flipping the other two around as well. So it doesn't really matter how you write it as long as you write it correctly, using the correct numbers. It's that time for you to practice these. Here are two problems. Make sure, I would like you to make a factor sum table to help you. just for the moment while we're practicing these, I won't make you do that for all of the times, but you need to for your notes, and then figure out what the answer is. All right, the answer to number 1 is r squared plus 11r plus, oops, I'm reading the question. Let me tell you what the answer is. Your answer is r plus 8 in parentheses and then r plus 3 in parentheses. Again, you can flip-flop the order. It doesn't really matter. Number 2, the got it there is n plus 12 in parentheses and then n minus 3 in parentheses. Next question is, how do I use factoring in the real world? Here we have a problem. The area of a rectangle is given by the trinomial x squared minus 2x minus 35. So what are the possible dimensions? In the past, we have found the area of a rectangle given the length and the width, but this time we are going to find what the sides could be. So using that trinomial, we are going to find the factors of x squared minus 2x minus 35. Very best way that I can think of to tell you is just make that table again of factors and sums and then just go through and brainstorm. So for example, 1 and negative 35 would be negative 34. Positive flip-flopping those signs isn't going to work. 5 and 7, negative 7 are factors, and hey, what do you know? That will give me a sum of negative 2, so that is what we're using. So the sides then would be x plus 5, and the other side would be x minus 7 as the possible dimensions. So you're not actually going to end up with a number answer, you're going to end up with 2 binomials. How do I factor trinomials with 2 variables? If we take a look here at this example problem, it'll help us kind of reason through what's happening. Now, I showed you the final answer. I'm just going to write above this how I got the 16ab, and that would come from the 7ab plus the 9ab. So that's where that came from, in case you weren't entirely sure. So very similar to what we have watched previously is that if I take my second part of that binomial, so the 9b and the 7b, if I were to multiply those together, I would get 63b squared. So we're looking at how, so that relationship is from multiplication. And then that 7 and that 9, if we add that together, we get a 16. But if you notice, both variables are being added here, and that comes from the 7ab and the 9ab. So we're finding the sum. So 9 plus 7 will give you the sum. And then you have to include both of the labels, so the a and the b there. The last thing you have to notice is that the a squared is just that first term, again, being multiplied, so it's just one variable. Here's one example for you. I have x squared plus 6xy minus 55y squared. So I'm going to still find the factors and the sums of 55, or negative 55, I should say. So for example, I have 1 and negative 55. That would give me a sum of negative 54. I know the positive flip-flopping signs won't work, so let's try 5 and negative 11. The sum of that would be negative 6, which is in the right direction because we need 6, which means I just have to flip my signs. Negative 5 and positive 11 will give me what the coefficients are that I'm using. So then I know x minus 5. And then I have to have my y value there because we have 2 variables. And then x plus 11. And that needs to have the y also because of the y squared. All right, please tell me the factored form of this trinomial. All right, you should have gotten an answer of m plus 9n in parentheses, and then m minus 3n in parentheses. If you have questions, we'll check in with you at school. This is the end of your video. Thank you for watching. I look forward to working with you on this in class.